Hello, everybody. I'm Candid Stanisci of CFL Talk, where you'll find us on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. It is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all I got something stuck. Cat in my throat. Sorry. To TVs 2000 smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on CFL Talk, joining me is David Morisuti. David, how you doing? I got to get rid of this frog in my throat. I'm drinking coffee. Maybe I shouldn't have drank coffee. It's not sitting well in my throat. How you doing, buddy?
Doing pretty good. I know it's a little later this week, but I think it actually worked out better that way that we didn't.
Yeah, we were able to include some news, and that news is that Nathan Rourke has come back to the Canadian Football League. Man, oh man, has he been on a tour and a rapid fire tour. BC signed him, and apparently he's been signed to the most lucrative contract for a CFL player.
Yeah, I thought maybe it was for the rest of the year, and then you see that it's for 3 years, and it's for some significant money. And at the same as while some are surprised, I don't think anyone should really be that surprised, because the only way BC was going to convince Nathan Rourke to come back is you got to give Nathan Rourke a reason not to even try to pursue another NFL opportunity. And the incentives and the money make sense, right? For Nathan Rourke, like, it's a 3-year deal. 2025, he'll make just under $750,000, and then in 2026, it's just over $800,000, so $809,000. And there are $6,000 in award incentives in both seasons. So if he wins like MOP or most outstanding Canadian, that's an extra $6,000 in his pocket. So he could make some decent coin. And obviously the main part of that deal too is he can make $200,000 in marketing money, which does not get included in the salary cap part of it. Mm-hmm. So if anything, so we talk about the numbers. I know 3 Down Nation's got great resource on this for anyone that wants to know. So essentially, yeah, he'll be paid $749,000, but he's only going to count $549,000 on the cap, because they take the marketing money. $200,000 of that marketing money doesn't have to be added to the cap. So that's money he gets, and the Lions don't have to declare it.
And what does he do for that money?
So essentially, autograph sessions, promotional, pretty much helping the team market the team. It's incentives for teams. It's a new little, I guess, new real wrinkle in the CBA where you got a player, maybe you want to pay him a little bit more, but you don't want it to count against your cap. You give them that money to say, look, you're going to be someone that's going to help sell tickets, sell merchandise. That money's yours.
So in other words, a popularity bonus.
Yeah, essentially. Right? And it's common now. It's actually become a lot more common the last few years for teams to do this, because the cap isn't exactly flourishing right now in terms of going up highly. And so how do you incentivize your players? In this case, how do you incentivize Nathan Rourke to come back? Well, we want to pay you this much. We can only afford this much on the cap. So we'll give you this bonus, this marketing bonus, because he's bringing butts in the seats anyways. Like I just saw BC is almost 30,000 for their next game on Sunday. I don't know if it's confirmed yet if he's starting yet, but I mean, we already know the impact Nathan Rourke has had during his time here.
We know also how well BC has been playing recently. I can think of the last 3 games not being very successful. Mm-hmm. And offense has been the biggest thing that people have pointed to in the failure that the BC Lions have come up with the last 3 games. And I think to the second last game, that big goose egg, something that hasn't happened in a few years, since 2021, I think 3 years since they've been shut out. So, yeah, I guess it's important that he comes back. I think the rest of the Canadian Football League benefits from this. As always, the more of this kind of talent we have, which, under in CFL lingo or parlance, he is generational. There is not another Canadian quarterback that has had the kind of impact he had in a single year.
Yeah.
We're seeing one maybe who finally may get the chance, like a Trey Ford, who's scratching that surface, if you will. He's scratching that ceiling. He hasn't blown the roof off yet, but he looks like he can. And the nice thing about it is the highest profile position in football, and therefore it'll draw a little more attention and maybe help with football interest down the road. So I guess my point is, the more interest he can raise in younger people who want to imitate him and be football players, that'll raise the popularity of the game, which, because of high school football shrinking, as we know here in the metro area, in the Toronto area, where we're seeing a lot of schools that don't have football programs anymore.
Mhm.
This is what a guy like this can do. It goes beyond the fact that BC can win more games, maybe even show up at the Grey Cup that happens to be being played in Vancouver, their hometown.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too. BC has a lot riding on this year as the host for the Grey Cup. We know that that's a game that they want to. I'm pretty sure it's pretty much close to sellout, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of people who are, who are looking for that opportunity to see a player like that, right, come back and hopefully, bring a little more province to it. Press a team that's really needed that elevated talent.
Talent like that is always a good thing. One always enjoys watching that kind of talent. You and I don't have to go that far back to understand the kind of talent he brings to the league. It was only a short few years ago that he was actually, he would have got a bonus then, or get a bonus now, if he has the kind of season he had then. So, he did splash onto the scene here in the Canadian Football League immediately. He had an impact, a massive impact, in fact. Great football player. We're lucky to have him come back into the Canadian Football League. The BC Lions, I don't know. I don't think they could have timed it more perfectly, this situation. Just basically right now, I can't impress enough about how their offense has really suffered the last few games. And if there isn't a cure out there other than Nathan Rourke, they're really happy they've got Nathan Rourke in the fold now.
I think that's the one there, right? Like, they're not worrying about getting Nathan Rourke if their other guy, if Delegala, he was the one obviously taking over for Vernon Adams, who's hurt. Like, if Delegala was flourishing, they're not making. I don't know if they would probably consider the move, but I don't think there was as big of a push to get that move done. And I think that's. And I see some people going, "Oh, like, poor Delegala, he loses out on a job," and it's like, BC Lions are in it to win it. They're not in it to say to. I would say for the good feelings. Hate to say that. Like, I think there tends to be too much of that. This guy worked hard for that opportunity. I'm sure he did, but it's more so. This is also a player. This is also a team that's got too much at stake to just hope that a guy like that can just get pretty much get it together, right? There's just too much riding on it. So it's unfortunate for him, but it's also, I mean, it's a good thing for the CFL to have a player like that come back, right? Like,
Yep.
I think now the other thing too that people have to remember, like, some are going to wonder, is this mean his NFL window's closed? Doesn't mean that. Every year a player has a chance to say, all right, I'm going to go try my shot at the NFL, and the team can will grant the release. Like that's a
Yep.
clause that's built
Every
into
day,
every
CFL
contract.
does it every end of season.
Whether that's going to be a thing, I don't know. I think for Nathan Rourke, I think this was maybe a little bit of a, I hate to say it, a little bit of a wake up call, right? Like,
Oh, yeah. It's not like he didn't. When I say didn't get a chance, I'm going to say it's not like he didn't have enough teams have a look at him. Something like 8, I guess, 6 or 8 teams that he actually belonged to for a short time, right? And it didn't get him anywhere. It got him a couple of snaps in exhibition season. We saw a very impressive exhibition game a couple of years ago when he first went there, and it didn't get him. It didn't garner him anything. And I guess we hear about the NFL and about coaching and about quarterbacks, and there's kind of a bias, and I'm not talking racism here. I'm talking college background bias. Like, it's almost as if you have to be from an elite football school to be a quarterback in the NFL. There's almost that going on. I get that impression anyway, and people have spoken to it as well. You can't make it as a quarterback in the NFL unless you come from an elite college. Very rarely does it happen that even Tom Brady, while he was picked so low, he still came from a pretty good college.
I think it also teams that draft quarterbacks already spend so much money, right? And in development and scouting of that player that makes that a thing too. Right. And so I think that's the other thing. I don't know if Eduardo can hear us, by the way. The Griff is waiting in the, I guess we call it the backstage.
Green room, backstage. Yeah, Griff will be joining us.
We have, so I don't know if Eduardo, I sent him a message. Hopefully Eduardo got the message that Griff is waiting for his entrance.
Absolutely, and to be included in here. So we'll try to drag this out a little bit longer so we can get Griffin his opinion in here, or we can move on and then do that.
We can. I'm sure
Yeah,
we can get Griff's opinion.
We can come back to this. I guess in conclusion, congratulations to the Canadian Football League and the BC Lions for bringing in a guy. And I wanted to add to your comment actually, in as far as Dolegala and any other quarterback. If Dolegala was a guy who could be a starting quarterback for the BC Lions, there's a job out there somewhere for him, because there are starting quarterbacks down and backup quarterbacks filling in for them at this moment. So there are 18 jobs required for quarterbacks in the Canadian Football League by my estimation, which means a starting quarterback and a backup quarterback. When a quarterback goes down, that means there's 19. When a second quarterback goes down, that means there's 20. So my point being that every time a quarterback gets injured, there's another quarterback that's necessary to fill that space that has to, and Dolegala can fit in any of those scenarios. If you really think he's that good and you're a big fan of his, trust me when I say this, he'll land on a team, because the merry-go-round of quarterbacking, if nothing else in the Canadian Football League is clearer, please tell me what it is. We've seen quarterbacks. We saw the Grey Cup champ quarterback last year was traded that season, right? We watched Montreal and their quarterback. We saw Harris go to Saskatchewan, and Saskatchewan trade their quarterback to Montreal to win a Grey Cup. So, the quality of the quarterback is always questionable, in the sense that, can he really not do it? We really don't know. I mean, sure, there are the quarterbacks, there are quarterbacks that we think should be the guys, like an Adams. We look at an Adams and go, where now Rourke is. We look at Adams and say, well, that's a guy who could win a Grey Cup. What a great quarterback. Well, he hasn't had a sniff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And other quarterbacks have. McLeod Bethel Thompson. Looking at his career as a whole, would you think that he'd be a Grey Cup champ? Maybe not. How many quarterbacks fit that? It's not so rarefied air to be a Grey Cup champion quarterback. It is in most cases, but it isn't an immediate qualification.
No, it's not. And look, I think quarterbacking part of it is like a feel. The team has kind of a certain belief and feel for a quarterback, and we've also seen it. Teams are kind of just stubborn with how they do things, and they want a specific quarterback, or they go a specific route. Right? It's more of a matter of also of comfort. When I look at, especially in BC's case, Vern Adams had some of his. I think his thing has never really been ability, right? It's always been some sort of injury, right? Like last year, he was hampered with an injury. They were able to get to the playoffs, but we can also tell that was impacting him a little bit. I mean, even Nathan Rourke got hurt in his first year, but was able to come back and eventually it worked out. Like I'm curious, when you look at around the CFL right now, how many teams are on their second, third guy? I look and we haven't talked about this because we've been talking about the Nathan Rourke situation. There's a quarterback right now who's going to make his first start of the year, and he hasn't played in over a year, and that's Jeremiah Mazzoli. You want to talk about a player who only lost his opportunity because of injury?
Right.
Jeremiah Mazzoli is one of those guys.
Somebody to replace him. Griff, just so we get you up to speed, we're talking about the signing of Nathan Rourke to the BC Lions, the biggest contract yet to this season for any player. We talked a little bit. David brought in the fact that he's getting $200,000 and basically, I call it a popularity bonus that isn't covered by the cap. Tell us your views on this quarterback coming back to the Canadian Football League.
So I think it's very good for the BC Lions. Ownership there has been really good from just a business standpoint, bringing fans in from what they did at the home opener to this Sunday. I literally saw their owner tweet, like basically post a video onto the team's Twitter account because it's also Family Kids Day Sunday. So it's, hey, we have this superstar quarterback returning. We have all this stuff there. So it's just great marketing on the part of the Lions, who are in a bit of a downward spiral right now. But as for the move, it's them going. I think it's one of two things. One, it's either I think Vernon Adams may be a little bit more hurt than originally anticipated when he hurt himself against Winnipeg a couple weeks ago. But also, too, it's just showing that this team wants to win. This team was the Grey Cup favorites at the beginning of the year, and they want to be as we start to linger towards Labor Day. Because like what Frank famously says, the season doesn't start until Labor Day weekend. So, you've got all that stuff there. But for the league overall, you have a marketable superstar. You have a player that you're bringing in and that you can build around. You have a team where, like I said, you have a team that's showing, hey, we are serious about winning. It does suck for VA considering, look, he was probably the biggest front runner for MOP up until his injury. But the fact that BC was so easy to pivot and get a winner in there, it kind of shows like, hey, we're doing good. Like I saw some discourse online where people were saying like, oh, Toronto should take a run at him, and like just throw Kelly to the wolves, but then you don't. That's just another story for another day. I'll get into that in a little bit. But from a business standpoint and just from the on-field standpoint, BC Lions just continue to show the rest of the league why they want to be number one and why they want to, hey, and their Grey Cup drought too. I know Hamilton's famously talked about, but I think it's been 13 years since BC last won. I think it was 2011.
Yeah.
That was the last time they hosted the Grey Cup as well.
Well, that one's kind of surprising, actually.
Yeah, that was the 3 years in a row, 11, 12, and 13. BC won it at home, Toronto won it at home, and then Saskatchewan won it at home 3 years in a row. So we agree with that. And the other thing to ask you, as far as we were getting into the topic of Dolagala, for example. Now, here's a guy that David was talking about. There are a lot of sympathetic people out there going, well, this guy doesn't deserve to be given he was doing pretty good. But I brought up the point that you need 18 quarterbacks that are able to play every week. Yeah. So, you add the ones that are injured, and you need 20-something quarterbacks. So can Dolagala be one of those 20-plus quarterbacks? Of course he can. and we've seen it. We saw a Grey Cup won by a Montreal quarterback that was traded. The team that traded him, Saskatchewan, felt they needed a change, and they took Montreal's quarterback in Harris, and they sent him Fajardo over to Montreal, and he won a Grey Cup. So my point I was making when you were just about to come in is that at least last year, you're not looking at a generational quarterback that won a Grey Cup.
Yeah.
You just need a really good quarterback, and whether Dolegala is that good is not the question, but whether he could be a candidate to be that good is the answer.
So with quarterbacks, it's very interesting because obviously, look, football, NFL, CFL, it's a very cruel business in the sense of one day you're employed, the next day you're kicked to the curb. We've seen this year with Sean Oakman, and even too Rasheed Bailey with Toronto, two guys who we thought were very good players for Toronto. Just, you know what, there wasn't a spot for them, so they were hey, see ya, bye. But with this move, with Dolegala, he can find a home. With VA, I know they're not going to trade him. You can think of 2025. I think there's at least 3 to 4 teams in the league that have question marks at quarterback. You have Calgary, for example, who aren't sold on Jake Mayer. Winnipeg, we don't know if Claros is going to retire. With Hamilton, too, no idea what's going on there with Bo Levi getting benched for the Saturday's game against Edmonton. And then Ottawa is very intriguing because Jeremiah Masoli obviously has a chance to show tonight. He is who we all thought he was, obviously, before the injuries. But then Drew Brown, too, is still a very young quarterback. So you have this mix to where if it can work where you have the quarterbacking needs, bring them in. It's worth a shot. If it doesn't work, you move on to the next one. So I think Dolegala, with the right mentoring and with the right quarterback play, it can work. Even Saskatchewan, too. Trevor Harris, we don't know what his future is going to be like with I was going to say green and gold, but that's not their color scheme. With the green watermelons out in the prairie. So to answer the original question, I think it can work with Jake Dolegala. It's just a matter of what team is willing to invest the capital in bringing him in.
And to your point, it's about the kind of coaching and the kind of offense that a team puts together. Is it that quarterback friendly? That's always the issue, and that's what happened with Fajardo, right? He ended up on a team that had a game plan that worked for him. And it wasn't an accident that it worked for him. He had his coach was there as the head coach. So he knew what he was getting when they traded for him. And the quarterback knew what he was going to be asked to do when he got there. So it isn't that quick a turn for Montreal winning a Grey Cup because we do know that without a really good quarterback, you're not going to win a good a Grey Cup. Sorry.
I think when you look at it here, and I think Griff brings up a good point that there's always teams looking for starting quarterbacks, and I think that shouldn't be a concern for Vernon Adams. I think for Vernon Adams, like especially for this year, their goal should be to win a Grey Cup.
Yep.
The question is, is it going to be you leading the charge? Is it going to be Nathan Rourke? That'll be the big question. But some players just, you know what, I want to win, just win a championship. Right? Like I look at Trevor Harris. If one day Saskatchewan was just like, we need you to, we feel like the other guy's a little bit better. Will he be able to put that aside for his opportunity to win a title? Right? I think that's first and foremost when it comes to Vernon Adams. And I do think there's a lot of teams in the league that could always use a little bit of a boost at the quarterback position. Look, you brought up quarterbacks being traded during the season. I always look at what happened with Zach Collaros. Got traded from Toronto to Winnipeg. Was never going to play in Toronto. Some thought maybe would never play again. He ends up leading Winnipeg to that Grey Cup. Right? And so, for me, it's like, I think you have to, you're right, Frank. It has to be the right situation. It has to be the team that's willing to make that push with the player and show faith in the player to be able to go all the way. And I think with BC, they did that when they traded for Vernon Adams, when they still had Nathan Rourke. Like, this is not the first time we've seen this where a team has gone.
That happened to him in Montreal. It happened to him in Montreal too.
So he's been there. I'd like to hear what he has to say about the situation, but I mean, if you're BC right now, you're telling them if we don't have anyone right now, we might not even make the playoffs with the way that they've been playing the last few weeks. It's not like they've been, getting by without Vernon Adams. They have been struggling, and that's that. I'm not even looking at selling tickets. I'm just talking about being in a position to even get to the playoffs, right? That's got to be first and foremost their priority is getting to the playoffs, and we all know once you get to the playoffs, it's anyone's game.
Yeah, to your point, as far as making the playoffs, I think we can all agree if someone realizes that what quarterbacks want is to start. Absolutely, they want to start. That's a given. But the other thing is they want to be on a team that can win because after in one play they can end up starting. So if you want to win, yeah, you want to be a starter. But if you want to win, you want to be in a team that has a shot to do it. And in that case, you get a shot to be the guy that does that. So it's not just about being a starter. It's about being in the right situation where an opportunity can happen, where you can be in a game. Let me use Kelly as an example with the Argonauts. Did he want to start for the Argonauts when he came here? You better believe it. He wanted to start. But it worked out pretty well for him. He wasn't the starter, but he ended up winning a Grey Cup, didn't he? And he was on the field to help win the Grey Cup. So that's something we all know, and that's something every quarterback knows and every player knows. They just want to be there and have an opportunity to be on a championship team. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to start. Being there is an important thing, and that's why Vernon Adams should want to stay in BC and why he won't want to leave. But sometimes we've seen this too, guys. We've seen players, quarterbacks that want to start, not more than they want to win, but winning isn't important enough to them. Starting is what they want to do.
So I just want to go back to David's point with the ticket sales thing. I think it's one of those, like, it's hand in hand. Like, I'm not trying to say Nathan Rourke was brought in to sell tickets. I think it's just, it's the cherry on top of your sundae. It's you have the sundae of all the fixings with it, and then it's just, hey, Nathan Rourke, that's that little cherry that's going to sell maybe an extra 5,000-10,000 tickets per game. I'm just ballparking a number. And even they have the I think it's Touchdown Pacific coming up in a couple weeks too.
That's right.
Which those games against Ottawa, I'm not calling them Grey Cup previews, but for both teams, it's going to kind of show us where each team is at. Even this Sunday's game with Winnipeg, this is a team that 2 weeks ago embarrassed you on their home turf, and now they're coming into your building, which is going to be probably packed. So it has the chance to make it for there. The whole thing with quarterbacks, too, it's always just like you referenced Tom Brady earlier. It's right place, right time. You got to take over. And even with the coaching situations with quarterbacks, especially in the CFL, look at what Edmonton did. They were like, hey, we're going to bring in MBT. It's going to work again. No. Change coach. Oh, hey, we're going to bring in Trey Ford. Trey Ford's been lighting it up, and I expect the same Saturday night in Hamilton. You have all these, you got to get all these perfect, it's when the stars align with quarterback and team, it's good. And with Vernon Adams Jr. right now, I think the big thing is, can you put your pride and your ego aside? Not saying he has an ego, just, the ego of I'm the man, I'm the starter, this is my team. You put that aside to say, hey, Nathan's here. You guys are going to work together because at the end of the day, we want to be in this building November 17th, hoisting that trophy over our heads. And you know what? I think it's something that they can do. It's basically now BC to this year is kind of like Toronto last year, where at this point in the season, they're their own worst enemy. If they don't accomplish the goal of the Grey Cup, I think it's going to have to do with them not executing properly rather than, a team was just better on that day. And that's not me crediting or discrediting Montreal last year. But we all know that Toronto just had, and I remember it was Frank who said this in the press box last year, they picked their worst day to have their worst day. And that's something BC has to avoid down the stretch.
I think the one thing, too, with Trey Ford, just before we get too ahead of ourselves,
just all
I don't know
that's all.
I don't know what his status is too, because he did get hurt the week before. I think it's a chest injury, been a little limited in practice. So I'm curious to see how that works out, like if he plays. But it just, when you've looked at the way he's played, Frank and I have been beating this drum for a good year. This player should never be benched.
Nope.
Not only that, where was he? There was that part there where he wasn't even on the sidelines. He wasn't even the backup quarterback. Sorry, David, continue.
No, you're totally right. It's ridiculous, and like, I mean, let's talk about also what's going on in Edmonton right now. Like, there's been so much news this week in the league. Like, they got a new owner,
and the fastest player in the
First
league.
First time they have an owner.
First time they have an owner. And Frank, like, you've been a part of this league for a long time. That's a big deal for a market like that in Edmonton that's only ever had community ownership. Now it's like you got somebody that's from what I've told, it's season ticket holder, someone that's got some money to spend. Like, CFL is doing a much better job getting owners lately. I commend I know Randy Ambrosie gets a lot of flack for how he's managed the league. I don't see anyone giving him any props for finding two owners for two teams that have, I mean, one team, especially Montreal, that could never find really an owner that want to stick around. But now you've got another situation where you got another quality owner right now.
And BC, throw BC in there too.
Yes, BC.
Which Griff mentioned already.
So, I mean, I know some people are going to have a thing to say about MLSE, but I think
pockets for a team that didn't make a profit. They were made for the Arcos, I think.
No, I agree. Like, I think the league has done a really good job finding owners that are willing to, I wouldn't say bankroll teams, but put a little bit like not cut back because the team isn't making money, right? Like, we're not seeing what used to be done in the past.
Well, or see after every week whether that ownership's going to hang on to that team or not.
Exactly.
Their ownerships were from game to game. We didn't know whether they would continue to own the team.
We literally had an owner say, "All right, we're done," in Montreal 2 years ago.
Yeah, and it wasn't like it was one of those things where, okay, we really don't want to do this, so we're going to think about quitting. We'll play out the year and then we'll look for a new owner. No, they just left the keys on the desk, and the league had to figure out who was going to own the team. Remember, the league owned the team for a little while before they brought in the ownership that you're saluting there, David. That's the kind of situation the CFL finds itself in because, quite frankly, they're not a money-making operation they're not a lot of money-making operation. They're basically they make money, but really the ownership has to believe in the game of football, has to love the game of football, has to feel that it's not about the money, it's about the game. That's the kind of owners they need. It's just that's the way it is. There is no, BC, when they brought their owner in, it wasn't about, okay, I'm going to come in here and make it work. I'm going to make a profit. We're going to blow the doors off financially. No, I'm here to make sure that this team stays in here, and I'm going to be here for a while to make sure this team is solvent. And that's the bar that they've got to reach, is making every team solvent. That's the issue with the CFL, and it's been that issue for decades. That's been the issue with the CFL for decades. Making teams solvent.
And also, too, TSN does have a big part in the revitalization in the CFL going back to, I believe, I think it was like 1997 or 1998 as well, where they realized, hey, there's money in TV. Just the only thing with the CFL is that they always, I feel like for a while there, especially like 10 years ago, they were really trying to bring in this younger fan demographic and stuff like that. But then I think once they eventually realized that, look, you're going to have a harder time finding new fans, but you basically just have to cater to the people that love this product, because there's that niche people. And I've noticed this too, because obviously, look, I've always been more of an NFL head than a CFL head, but by covering the game, making friends with guys like you, it's brought me closer to the game to where, weekly I'm keeping up with it, watching it, betting on it, etc. It's something like that can just help. You have all these little niche things with the CFL, because even you see it all. The one thing I'll say with the CFL that's different than the NFL is just the fact that the fans can come together and away fans can go to an away venue. And with the exception of maybe a couple of places, you're never really going to run into problems. Like, you see a lot of fighting in the NFL with fans. You don't see that in the CFL. Hell, in Hamilton last year, it felt like the last day of school where it's like all these fans are just together. Hey, this is our one big hurrah before the season goes away, instead of like a corporate extravaganza like the Super Bowl has become. But I love the fact too, like you're saying, Frank, that look, these owners know, hey, you're not probably going to turn the best profit in the world, but you can market the game and just get it out there, like what BC's doing, like what Toronto's starting to do, because Toronto realizes, hey, we're not just going to sell our game next week because Saskatchewan's a top draw, but hey, it's pay $25, get admission, eat the wasabi ice cream, and come watch a great game of football, like what my wife's doing. And I know we've brought this up before on my show, but I assume the three of us will indulge in an ice cream sandwich after next week's game. So, and I'm sorry if I made you hungry, David, but that's just the beautiful thing about the league and the game.
How dare you?
He's talking about the waffle ice cream.
Oh, absolutely. Not the wasabi one. I just saw the weird food concoctions, but like I was already
because
planning
I'm
on doing that
wondering what a
next Thursday.
wasabi ice cream tastes like, and I'm not sure I'm a fan. But anyway, yeah, because the exhibition is going to be at at BMO at the exhibition grounds. So that's all going to be part of what's going on. So it'll be a lot of fun, and that's the important thing that the CFL can do, and it's what they work towards, is having fun. In Toronto, one of the things that they did immediately, or tried to do, one of the things that MLSE was able to do because of their corporate power, they were able to go to the city of Toronto and say, hey, look, we want to bring tailgating here. And the city said, we don't do that. Well, a year or two later, they were doing that. And I got to tell you, if you've gone to a CFL game, and a Argo game in particular, the tailgating's a lot of fun. You have quite a few people there that are having a good time, and it becomes the kind of football event that Griff's used to with the NFL on a much smaller scale. Admittedly, I don't want to try and sell it as people are diving off tables and landing on tables, but they are having fun.
What? I was told otherwise. No, you don't want these roadblocks, although I'm not even going to bring up my experience last week trying to get to the Argo game.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, look, people outside the Toronto market don't understand. David, I think you should mention that, because that's not the Argo's fault, but it is something that they pay for, right? So I got to the game, and I got there before the national anthem. I got there
because I had to leave you
at
the entrance off of the lake shore. This is what happens when you're a city that doesn't coordinate events and don't know. You essentially expect people to be able to handle the roads properly in events areas, especially when you have a concert across it. Like, look at the BMO field. People think, oh, it's in a great location, easy to get to. No, I mean, you can get there by GO train, but it's tough. Griff does it. He could tell you how the GO train is every time. You're on a set schedule for that GO train. You miss a train, you're stuck, for a half hour?
Yep.
For the next one? That's lovely.
But that's the best scenario. Griff's doing the best scenario. If you drive down there, I want to make sure you make this point.
Yeah.
We were stopped in traffic. So David said unselfishly, he said, Frank, you don't have to stay in the car. So I got out and I walked to BMO. It was a 10-minute walk to BMO to go.
Because across the street there was a concert going on. I think it was Imagine Dragons.
Yes.
At the Budweiser stage.
The
Argo game. I had prepaid for parking before because, thinking I'll try to get a better rate by paying ahead of time. They shut the parking lot down. Part of the reason is because they didn't have room, because the CNE is being set up, so they're taking away part of the parking lot. And the guy, I said, okay, well, that other parking lot, why isn't the other parking lot open? He said, it's being repaved. What do you mean it's being repaved? So you already blocked off another parking lot people could go to. The closest parking lot, and I couldn't even get into that parking lot because the lineup was a disaster, was right near the Raptors facility, which is probably a 15-20 minute walk through everything. I said usually the best route, Liberty Village, which is across the train tracks. That's about a 15-20 minute walk as well. That's a 1-lane road each way. There was a car accident.
Oh God.
And so I couldn't even get to the parking lot of Lamport Stadium, which is where I was planning to park. I couldn't find parking on the side streets. It was bumper to bumper traffic everywhere in that area. I got there, Frank, 3 minutes left in the first quarter.
First quarter or the half?
No, I got there first quarter.
Okay.
I got to see the last 3 minutes of the first quarter, which were the worst three. This is like the worst part. Like all the scoring was done by that point.
So let's not lose track of why you told this story. If you weren't covering the game and you were just a fan, you would think about it twice about going through that.
I would be thinking twice.
Right, and that's the challenge the Argos have. I keep having people talk to me about, is it hard to get to the game? And I've done, no, you just go to the GO train. I go in the car, but that experience at the last game was a eye-opening an eye-opening experience. I hadn't run into that. And that is, to David's point, I agree with you 100%, David, that unfortunately the road system it's not capable of handling the venues that are there all in one place without a common sense system for moving people around. It gets to the point where you have people on the street pulling over and stopping traffic. Saying goodbye, letting people out, and then they were stopped, Griff. They were stopped all along Lakeshore, and Lakeshore at its best times with cars that are trying to move can't move, and when you have cars that are intentionally not moving, and either waiting for somebody to get in or waiting for somebody to get out, that's just it was very frustrating. I felt sorry for David, and I couldn't believe how long it took him to show up. I really couldn't. I was surprised.
There was also a few other. Sorry to cut you off, David. There's a couple other events going on. The Jays were playing. There was a concert at Scotiabank Arena, and you guys know this too. I have a family wedding. My sister got married last Saturday, which was down at U of T. So I was in that traffic too. I actually drove by BMO Field, and I was like, "There, my friends are in there." But that's why I do the GO train, especially now too, because I used to live in the GTA. Now I live in the Kitchener-Waterloo area. So for me now, it's a 45-minute drive just to get to the GO train, and then and then about a 45-minute to an hour train ride in. So I'll get to experience that for the first time next Thursday. It's gonna be a lot of fun. But that's the thing that the fan has to consider, like even for next week, if they're gonna drive down to the game. Hey, parking at the CNE is extremely limited. Ontario Place, there's no parking now. Liberty Village parking is kind of wish a dime a dozen. The only time I ever did it was the East Final last year. And then, David, do you remember the practice where Chad Kelly was extended?
Yep.
Yeah, the one where I had Chris email me at 8 a.m. Hey, Griff, you coming? And I just because I had never had that before. It's usually, hey, here's when practice was, but that was a please let me know if you're coming practice. So I was like, okay, I'll be there. But besides that, though, it's you got to factor all those things in when going to the game because, look, for a lot of people who have kids, you don't want to spend all the time on the train, or you getting the train, you have to leave a little bit earlier. Me, myself, I don't mind making that sacrifice just because I know that, especially too now the drive for me, like Frank and I have the long drives to get into the city. But with the average fan, think about it. If you're coming from like where David is, probably in the northern parts of Toronto, it's, hey, we'll come down there quickly, or we can take TTC. But that's not easy too because you got to find your way to Union Station, and then you got to get over to the exhibition ground. So,
Dufferin, Frank's done the Dufferin bus before. That's
not bad.
It's not bad, but you still got to make that walk from Dufferin. The Bathurst streetcar used to be okay. The Queens Quay streetcar, forget it. That's stuck in the same traffic nightmare as always. So,
yep.
And parking is $45. $45.
32. $32 for parking
in some places.
In most of the lots near the stadium. I'm
thinking. Sorry, I'm thinking of the Skydome. My bad. I mean the Rogers Center.
Yes.
So it'll be good once they get that subway line opened up in about 20, 30 years. Essentially, is what I'm saying.
Hamilton is the one place. The only thing I was gonna say though is Hamilton does get parking right because it's always $20 flat. And there's a plaza. You think you guys know it's like there's a Freshco, and I think there's like a weed store there. It's like I don't know what the streets are, and there's a KFC across the way. Barton Street. Park there for Ticats games. If I go Labor Day, that's where I'll park. It's just tip of advice for people going to the game on Labor Day: avoid the QEW after the game's over because it's going to be bumper to bumper traffic. But with Toronto, though, it's quite simple. It's try to use. That's why whenever there's events going on, they always try to stress use public transit. But like I know you guys always drive down, so it's different. There is one thing though I will say about the Go Train is why I like the exhibition game. So whenever I get off the train at exhibition, I always have to walk around the food building to get to, I think, gate 5 where we go in. But because gate 1's that area outside of the food building is an active, like it's technically you're in the stadium. They have the trailers set up with like the beer and the merch and the party zone. They do it for Toronto FC as well. But that's not going to be non-existent next Thursday, so I can just go whoop, 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 and then make my way in. I did it last year; it was great. And basically, yeah, that's just one other thing I want to get off my chest too, because we know it's the one CNE game a year. But one thing with the CFL that I have a bit of a gripe with, and I remember Frank, you and I were talking about this at the home opener, was the fact that the game was 7 o'clock on a Sunday night. I feel like if the CFL started doing games on Sundays, that like West Coast is an exception, but like say this Sunday, Winnipeg and BC are playing. The game starts at 7 Eastern, which is 4 o'clock Pacific. Why can't you have Toronto versus BC on a Sunday afternoon at BMO Field at 4 o'clock? Like, when they play the Red Blacks in October, it's a Saturday, I think a 3 or 4 o'clock kick. And for us, too, and especially you, Frank, instead of getting home at midnight, 1, 2 in the morning, you'll probably be back home before 10, 11. Even
Well,
me, same
people
thing.
the people from my neighborhood can't use transit. Because if you use transit at that late, you're going to about 5-6 hours to get home.
I meant driving, just in general.
I'm just saying that to add to the point, I agree with you. But also, you don't have a choice. You have to drive. So when, in my case, I have to drive. I don't have any choice. Either that's a 5-6 hour trip, getting on the TTC and stuff. But again, what we're talking about is making the fan experience worthy of being repeated. And what's happening is the circumstances that the Argos have to deal with basically put them in a position where they couldn't sell tickets no matter how good they play. And that's the thing I'm beginning to learn with, especially with the way it is right now. I keep looking and going, the team's playing this well. Where is everybody? Come on. The way the Argos have played the last couple of years, one has to wonder why they're drawing flies, and I keeps coming back to it. Isn't they're not football fans? Because as you said, Griff, about TSN's TV numbers are really good. In the metro area, they're really good as well. They're competitive with the NFL when they're up against the NFL. So we must know that it isn't the game that's the problem. It's something else.
I'll let David go.
I'll add this too. There are a lot of fans who are not happy about the Chad Kelly situation. I feel like if we should bring this up on the show, that people keep asking me, what's the Chad Kelly situation? What's the Chad Kelly situation? The league has now finally gotten all the information. It's now finally initiating a review of whether he is going to be eligible to return. And according to Farhan Lalji, Kelly's meeting with Ambrosi on Friday, so tomorrow. Whether that's just part of the process, whether or not there'll be a quick turnaround, because the Argo, we had this conversation on Griff's show,
yes,
about when he was going to return. I still don't see that Saskatchewan game as realistic enough, based on how long it's taken the CFL to do all this. But Labor Day, I think, is a possibility.
Do you think
the Saskatchewan game's a week today, right?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Do you think the Ottawa game's an opportunity as well? Just because and obviously I brought up the points about what Labor Day could potentially be if that were to happen. But say if he comes back Labor Day, doesn't have the best game, he only has a few days to turn it around. So do you think maybe giving him that extra cushion to then come back against the Red Blacks could also maybe a better option?
I think it depends on Ryan Dinwiddie and how he feels Chad Kelly is. Like, it's not like Chad Kelly's learning a new offense. It's not like Chad Kelly's coming in there not like off an injury where he's not physically in there. It's whether or not is he able to click right away physically to everything. Yeah, like Nathan Rourke might be playing. I'm supposed to be playing this week, and the guy has just started practicing yesterday. Right? So it's the CFL is one thing where you have players that are capable of doing it, and Kelly's probably had the playbook. I mean, he's got everything since training camp, so it's not like he's that far behind.
He can't go to practice, but that doesn't mean practice can't go to him.
I do know that he has been working out. I'm sure he's is working out with some of the players.
And he's getting all the film, and he's getting, he might not have, like, it's not like he's a rookie and he's never experienced being a quarterback, ever. To add on to your point, David, it's not just the way the team has its offense worked out that he understands. He's played football before for a while, and there's a the memory muscle is the thing that really will hold him back. We had this conversation on your show, Griff, and it's not about whether he can be a good quarterback. He just has to get into game shape. We talk about that in every sport. But as a quarterback, game shape for a quarterback isn't the same as game shape for a running back or a receiver, right? It's more mental than it is physical.
That is 100% true, because that's where I factor, and I said this last week with you guys, where I factor the Hamilton in, because if you go south there, it can go south badly, not just physically, but mentally as well, because we know some of the nuts who sit right next to the visitors bench there. We know what happens there. Labor Day too, it's turned up to 10. Fun fact, with the Costco's out here, they actually sell Tie-Cat like combo packs where it's like you can buy 2 tickets for like $60. There's only 2 games that you cannot buy, and both are the Argo games. So they know it's a premium thing. One other thing I want to say about Hamilton quickly with just fan promotion. It's weird. They're only doing it for season ticket holders, but Saturday they're doing $2 hot dogs. And I know Toronto's really predicated on that by doing, the cheaper beers, not the $29 beers or a $14 hot dog, but they do the $5 hot dogs, the $7 beers, the shipyards. So they have that untapped potential, but I also think as well, besides the Chad Kelly situation, why fans aren't coming out, the TV numbers are good because, like, my uncle's a perfect example of this. He loves the Argos, lives, breathes, dies by them. But he'd rather be in his basement in his chair drinking a 6-pack of Molson than heading down to BMO Field to watch a game, So it's just, you have that demographic as well, where there's your typical fan who...
An experience.
Who'd rather have the at-home experience, just boozing on the couch, and then either, like David, they'll call into the radio shows after the Leaf games and say, like, the famous expression from O-Dog, Randy from Port Colborne with 30 rum and cokes in his system. So that's what I think too may be impacting it as well.
Well, it's about making it easy to get there and get home, and it's just not easy. It's just not easy. It's a pain, and you know what? Even if it was greased lightning, right? A lot of people aren't going to do it anyway, because nobody I think that trip to the basement's a lot more attractive than that trip onto the TTC or, the 20-25 minute, even if it's just a 20-25 minute ride there and back. It's still not as much fun for some to just go to the basement and drink their not free beer, but pretty cheap beer. Right. So, it's all about the fan experience, and there's a lot of reasons to not go. In the case of the Toronto Argonauts, there are too many things that basically conspire against the success of the Toronto Argonauts. And we've looked to find reasons for success. And I think everybody's turned up every rock there is for what'll make it successful. And it comes down to, in fact, this was a lesson learned a long time ago when the Argos were actually contemplating with their 2 owners, going to York University and just to get away from the hassle of going downtown. But we've learned in sports that sports teams don't do well when they're not downtown.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough. It's always a tough thing. They view that location as a more central. Obviously the dome was unattainable. That was done for them. So this remains their this remains their best option. I hate to say it. Some say, why don't you go north? You can't. You can't put yourself in a position to take it away from a public transit line. So they're gonna have to live with that. We'll see if there's any C&E bump. I'm curious if there will be a C&E bump, and usually there is. But it's a Thursday night game. It's not a weekend game, and that's another thing that remains a tough one for the league to sell those games.
I think if they can get between 17 to 20,000 next Thursday night, it's chalked up as a win in their books. Because I remember,
massive win. They've been averaging almost about 12.
Yeah, so if they can, because I was looking at the ticket map, because I think my wife's going to come and go to the game, and there's some other people I know going to the game as well. Because I was telling her as well, hey, we'll go to the CNE, and then she'll hang out with our friends and stuff like that while I go inside and get ready. But the fact you get that, and also to the fact that the Argos are doing all these social media campaigns right now, shout out Austin, that hey, $25 gets you into the CNE, but $25 also gets you a football game.
And it's one of those times where I find that Reporters Row has less questions at the end of the game.
Because we want to go eat our ice cream sandwiches, right, David?
Waffle ice cream sandwiches.
This is the one time Chris Bolanovich doesn't have to say one more question. Actually,
Right,
he does say one more question. Anybody got one more question?
No one. Okay, good.
Nobody. Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to get ice cream. Yeah, no, it's an annual thing that we've started doing. It's the ice cream sandwich at the X. I guess we've discussed the Argos, we've discussed Kelly, we've discussed Rourke. What we haven't discussed is, and I'd like to discuss it with you guys, the teams and the way they're playing. We touched a little bit on Ottawa. We've talked before, are they a surprise? Are they playing the way they're going to play? And we touched on a very important subject when it comes to Ottawa, and that is Mazzoli. Now, this is the guy that was going to bring them, not necessarily a Grey Cup, but he was going to bring them to competitiveness they had not seen in a few years. Is there really that much pressure on how well he's going to play, looking at the way Ottawa has played? That they've got a pretty good record. They're doing pretty well. Be nice to get that guy going, though, wouldn't it?
So I've been posting, as I think you guys know, I post my betting videos every week. I took Calgary to win tonight just because, coming off a bad loss, they're at home. At home, they seem to be unstoppable. So I think tonight they get the win. But it's those next two games against BC where, look, that's one thing about Ottawa. You know what? They haven't been tested. I know it's Calgary tonight. So if they, even last week too against Saskatchewan, they still held their own. It's next Saturday when BC comes to town is when I'm really going to look at them and say, who are you? What are you all about? Like, today's game's one thing just because, Calgary is such a flash in the pan. But like I said, I just picked Calgary just because. But with next weekend, though, you really have the big cat, no pun intended, walking into your building, into a building where either you're going to win, you're going to tie, or it's pouring rain. Because I feel like every Red Blacks home game, it's pouring rain. So that's the big question with me with Ottawa is, how are you going to handle it now that you're starting to play some of the bigger dogs? How are you going to handle it? Hell, they haven't played Toronto yet this year. In their only game against Montreal, they got absolutely smoked in Montreal. To be fair, that was banner night, and also I said that was my lock of the week with Montreal minus 7.5. But when you have the good teams from the West coming in, how are you going to do against them? You did good against Saskatchewan. They came back. Remember, we were talking, the game was boring, and it was an exciting finish. But I look ahead to them already for next weekend and the week after with BC and say, if they can get out of that 1-1, I think they're good. They go 0-2 against those teams. I'm going to start to wave the red flag with the Red Blacks.
Well, the surprise is gone, right, David? With Ottawa. Now teams treat them with a little more respect, right?
Yes.
You know who you are.
And I think their record gives this a little less pressure on Mazzoli to come out and be a hero. I just hope that they show out a little better than they did against Saskatchewan. I don't think they deserve to win that game, personally. So I'm curious to see how he does with the time off, how fresh he is. But he's been waiting for a couple weeks. Like, they've been going really relatively slow. I'm just what I'm hoping for. We don't have to hear anything about any injury concerns with Jeremiah Mazzoli. I just want him to make it through.
When is he coming back?
Healthy. That's all I need from him.
I wish the best for him. I don't think he took the mantle from Collaros, right? Yeah. Hard luck quarterback, and then Mazzoli was the next hard luck quarterback.
Yeah,
the one
right. Tough situations.
Very tough. One game I also look at is tomorrow night's. I think tomorrow night's is going to be a very telling game for both teams as well, because we've seen Montreal beat up on Hamilton the last 2 weeks, but against the Saskatchewan team, who's been looking pretty good, and like David was saying, should have won last week. I want to see what they do because I haven't seen their depth chart, but I'm not sure if Cody Fajardo is playing or not. But I got to say, out of all the games this weekend, that's the one where I look at as, okay, this is the game where you can really find out what both teams are all about. Like, you know, a true test for both teams.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, guys, we've had such a good time. We ran a little bit over. Eduardo's in there pulling out his hair, wondering how he's going to make this all work. Since we're just kidding. Listen, guys, it was really good. Griff, give us your I'm going to say Twitter, but your X and your show. Give it a plug.
You know what? I will. Twitter, Instagram, Mr. Griff B. It's all there. I basically post with the Argos with these guys, do my writings. I do reels from the game, exclusive content, all that fun stuff. And also, if you're an NFL fan, CFL fan, or just a football fan in general, it is YWC Football Talk. Just released episode 305 last night, which was very exciting. And I'm just keeping on building my media footprint within the football empire world. And I'm very excited to keep on trucking, and was very fortunate and very lucky to come on here with you guys today, and love to do it again.
thank you, Griff.
We'll definitely make that possible. David, throw yours out there.
Yeah, you can follow me D_Morsudi. You can go check out some of my stuff at sportsnet.ca and my Argos newsletter that comes out every week. I'm gonna have to do so. I'm probably gonna look on Chad Kelly and maybe just do a little bit of a quarterback roundup because we don't really have much other news going on.
Well, every time you turn this thing on, you'll find me here, Candid Frank Live. You Google that, you'll find everything that I do, like it or not. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate this. So for Ben and David, I'm Candid Frank. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, Aaron Live Mondays at 4 p.m. This, of course, is Thursday. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download, and live it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to Candid Frank Stanisci on YouTube.